Good morning, friends. Thanks, Dr. Murlidhar, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be with this talented young people. And this is my curriculum. You can go through that. And straight away, I'll start with the topic, which is very important topic. That is diastolic dysfunction, perioperative management. I'm sure you must have come across such cases quite often. So, this is Thomas Sowell who has said it that it takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of our ignorance. Yes, we are still very ignorant about diastolic heart failure and diastolic dysfunction. So, what is diastolic heart failure? It is an iceberg of heart failure problems. It's very common, friends. It's very common. Incidence is more than 50% of all heart failure patients. Mortality and morbidity is at par with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, that is HEP-REF, that is systolic heart failure, to which we are used to all these days. But this diastolic heart failure or diastolic dysfunction is now recognized as an independent predictor of adverse cardiovascular events. And all vulnerable patients with dyspnea, mind you, in your pre-operative examination, all these patients or these patients with heart failure due to systolic failure must be evaluated for diastolic dysfunction. So I would like to deal with this topic under these headings like introduction of this, then clinical presentation, causes, interpretation of echocardiography report and case examples, which is very important, which as an anesthesiologist, sometimes we don't, we have to look at this more carefully. And last but not the least is anesthetic management of diastolic failure. So coming to the introduction of diastolic function, which is also known as HEP-PEF. In cardiology, this is popularly known as HEP-PEF, and systolic failure is known as HEP-REF. So we will deal with ventricular diastolic tracing and its components, suckers and pusher concept, and we will see certain laws of cardiology with respect to systolic and diastolic dysfunction. Coming to this famous simultaneous pressure tracings of LV and LA in diastole. This is the sudden drop of LV pressure during early diastole, which is LV relaxation slope. Then comes the sucking effect, that is initial sharp dip below the left atrial pressure. Then is LV stiffness and compliance, slope of diastolic pressure. Okay, this diastasis where the pressure is equalized is the function of stiffness and compliance. And last, which is atrial contraction, is LV stiffness and compliance, again deciding the LV and diastolic pressure. So this early diastolic gradient between LA and LV causes sucking effect, and some pushing effect of LA cause E wave on echocardiography. You all know that. So what is diastolic dysfunction? There is elevated left ventricular end diastolic pressure with normal ejection fraction. That is very important. That is why it is known as HEPF, preserved ejection fraction, and normal LV volume. That is diastolic dysfunction. In systolic failure, LV volume is increased. You know that heart is dilated. So, what happens in early diastole is this: when you put, there is less tissue relaxation because maybe due to hypertrophy of the heart, fibrosis, and many other reasons. So there is, when you put cursor on the echocardiography machine on the lateral or medial aspect of mitral annulus, what you get is tissue Doppler velocity. That is also known as E prime. These different waves are very important to decide left atrial pressure, which is very important for all of us during management of these patients during perioperative period. So when there is left ventricular is filling in diastole, when blood is pushed from left atrium to ventricle, the blood velocity which is measured by echocardiography is also known as E wave, and atrial kick is known as A wave, and normal E by A is more than 1 and less than 2. So this is the mitral inflow velocity which is measured at the tip of the mitral valve, and these are the curves which we get E and A wave. Okay, so you can see that this is the sucking effect. Now what happens in raised LAP, which we are more concerned about, because that is where your patient will land in difficulty and you will be in a big problem. So in this case, whenever there is E by A, that is early diastolic Doppler wave and atrial kick wave is more than 2, that means there is raised LA pressure. So there is a pushing, already LA is increased, LAP is increased. So LA pushes the blood into LV because a ventricle is thick. It has no compliance. It doesn't, pressure doesn't go below left atrial pressure during early diastole. There is no sucking effect. And that is how this is known as pusher effect. And this is the E, very tall E wave and very small A wave. So how do we calculate left atrial pressure from echo? See, echo is non-invasive and still it can give you left atrial pressure just being at the bedside of the patient. Because E wave, as I told you, is a function of LA pressure, pusher effect, and LV relaxation, that is sucker effect. And E prime, which is a tissue relaxation, tissue movement which we measure on echo, it is a function of LV relaxation. So when you divide E by E prime, what you get is LA pressure. So when this E by E prime is more than 14, it is known as raised LA pressure. You have to be really careful in these cases. So I will walk you through all these different grades of diastolic dysfunction. See, I am going to present this topic not from the theoretical point of view, but understand this. When you understand it, you will just understand different shades of it, because it is an amalgamation of different shades and it's a spectrum. So you don't know in which spectrum you are, and sometimes you push the patient into another severe spectrum. So you have to bring back that patient to a previous little less severe form. Okay, so that is how one has to understand. So see what happens. We will study all these with impaired relaxation. How is the heart in normal in grade 1, grade 2 and grade 3. Then we will see how it is as far as increased LV stiffness is concerned, and how it is when elevated LA pressure is concerned. So in normal, when E and A are normally placed, E prime is also normal, there is no relaxation. In grade 1, yes, there is impaired relaxation. Grade 2, yes. And grade 3 also, yes. See here, now this green denotes, green arrow denotes.
Madam, screen not be seen, madam. Slides are not sharing.
Oh, slides are not shared. Until now you didn't say anything. Sorry?
Ma'am, only your first slide is there, ma'am. Other slides are can't see, ma'am.
Okay. Let me share it again. You have missed the important aspect of it then. Oh. Is Rajiv there? Are you able to see now? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can see now.
Okay, then I will rapidly go through these slides because they are very important. Okay?
Yeah, please put it on slideshow.
Yes, I will put it on slideshow. I'm very sorry for that, but this is a different platform. Anyway, are you able to see now? Hello? Are you able to see now all this?
Yes, ma'am. This
Yes.
grades of diastolic dysfunction slide.
So, are you able to see overview? Which slide you are seeing?
The grades of diastolic dysfunction.
No. Grades of diastolic. Rajiv, can you help me in this? Are you seeing any movement of my slides? Which slide you are seeing?
Simultaneous pressure tracings of L.
Hello? Hello, are you able to see this overview?
Yes, ma'am. Overview we can see.
Now let
Yes.
me know. Are you able to see this now? Introduction to diastolic dysfunction.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Now let me know immediately. Whenever I will turn this next slide, I will ask you whether you are able to see. Okay. So we will be studying this in these parts like ventricular diastolic tracing and its component, sucker and pusher effect, and laws of cardiology with respect to systolic and diastolic dysfunction. I have changed the slide. Are you able to see now? Hello.
Yeah, we are able to change. See the change of slide.
Simultaneous pressure tracings of LV and LA in diastole. Are you able to see this? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Should I continue now from this here?
Yes, ma'am.
Because this is very important concept, okay? So this is the famous pressure tracings of LV and LA in diastole at the same time, okay? So this is the first dip in pressure during diastole. Whenever ventricle relaxes, there is a pressure dip, which is also known as LV relaxation slope. Then this is the sharp initial dip, which is also responsible for sucking action of blood from LA to LV. This is the pressure is equalized in LA and LV, so there is diastasis, and left ventricular stiffness and compliance are the determinants for this curve. Okay. And this last, again atrial kick, again this is also the function of left ventricular stiffness and compliance, and this part determines what is left ventricular end diastolic pressure, which is very famous, and it is very important to judge the patient, where is the patient, whether he is sinking or whether he is improving. So this early diastolic gradient between LA and LV, due to sucker effect of LV and pushing effect of LA, there is E wave on the Doppler in echocardiography. So what is diastolic dysfunction? There is elevated left ventricular end diastolic pressure with normal ejection fraction, very important, and normal LV volume. That is LV diastolic dysfunction. In systolic dysfunction, LV is dilated. There is no normal volume in LV. Okay, that is the basic difference between LV systolic and diastolic dysfunction. So coming to this early LV relaxation slope, whenever it is less steep, that means lower tissue velocity. The tissue movement is less because of many reasons, like heart is hypertrophied, compliance is reduced, it is fibrous, and so many other things. And this is measured at the tip of this annulus of the mitral valve, at the lateral point and at the septal point. And these are the waves with, this is transthoracic E prime and A prime. Okay. So this E prime is very important, which I will come to that in a short way. And as we are measuring E prime, that is the wave of tissue movement, in a similar way, a blood velocity is measured at the tip of the mitral valve, and that is known as E wave. And whenever atrial kick happens, the velocity which happens in blood at the tip of the mitral valve is known as A wave. And normal E by A is more than 1 and less than 2. So these all depends on the pressure gradient between left atrium and left ventricle. And that is why we take these waves into consideration while coming to diagnosis of left atrial pressure. So what is raised LA pressure? So whenever there is pusher effect, LA has to increase its pressure to push the blood from LA to LV because LV is very stiff. That is known as pusher effect, where E by A is more than 2. And it is shown in this diagram that this LA is pushing the blood into this hypertrophied ventricle, and the waves which we see in echocardiography, in transthoracic of course, this is E and this is A, okay? And this also shows how LA is increased more than LV. LA pressure is increased more than LV. So this is the normal curve, and it is decompensated diastolic dysfunction. So what is E by A pressure? E by E prime ratio. This is very, very important. This is E by E prime ratio in echocardiography is the golden ratio which decides what is LA pressure. So E is the function of LA pressure, that is pushing effect, and LV relaxation, that is sucking effect. E prime, which is the tissue velocity, it is a low velocity compared to this blood velocity. It is the function of LV relaxation. So when you divide E by E prime, the denominator, you come to know LA pressure. And when E by E prime is more than 14, what you have to look into echo report is what is E by E prime. That is, if it is more than 14, preoperatively, certainly you are in a big problem. I will walk you through all these grades of diastolic dysfunction. This is normal and then grade 1, 2 and 3. You all know this now. But I will just walk you through this as far as impaired LV relaxation is concerned, increased LV stiffness and elevated pressure, elevated LA pressure. Okay. In this normal curve, there is no relaxation abnormality. You see cardiologists writing in record report impaired relaxation. So that means diastolic dysfunction has started. So in grade 1, yes, there is impaired relaxation. E is less than A. E prime is again less than A prime. In grade 2, of course, there is impaired relaxation because it is a severe form. And grade 3 also there is impaired relaxation. So you can see over here, this green line, good LV relaxation. Bad LV relaxation, bad LV relaxation, bad LV relaxation. Coming to increase LV stiffness. In normal heart, it is normal. Stiffness is normal. In grade 1, it may be stiff or may be normal. It is just started. In grade 2, certainly there is increased LV stiffness. And grade 3, severely non-compliant LV. One can see by looking at this diastasis that green, it is normal LV stiffness, increased LV stiffness in grade 1. Are you following me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it is very important, try to understand, this is very important concept. There is increased LV stiffness, red arrows, and increased LV stiffness in grade 3. So elevated LA pressure, which is the most important factor as far as anesthesia is concerned. In normal patient, of course, it is normal. There is no elevated. In grade 1 also there is no rise in LA pressure. But in grade 2 and grade 3, there is increased LA pressure. So you can see by this arrow, increased LA pressure beyond LV pressure. Okay. So what do you understand by this? That this is the sucking effect which is responsible for the movement of blood from LA to LV, and here LA has to push blood by at the cost of increase in pressure, and that is how you get sucking and pusher's concept. So these two, normal and grade 1, is known as compensated diastolic dysfunction. There is normal LAP or PCWP, provided there is no mitral stenosis or lungs are normal at rest. Raise LAP and EA ratio during exercise and tachycardia. See, when you go to see patient in the preoperative period, patient may complain that he gets breathless after exercise. So sometimes patients stop moving. So he says, I am normal. There is nothing abnormal with me. But you have to ask this history in detail. If he is getting breathless after exercise, which he never used to get, that means he may be in grade 1 with raised LAP after exercise. That's a very important concept. So what is the sequelae of this chronically raised LA patient? Why it is so important? Because LA volume increases. There is pulmonary hypertension due to back pressure. There is RV diastolic volume overload and gradually RV also start failing. And there is increase in TR velocity. Lot of importance is given to TR velocity these days when while grading the diastolic dysfunction. So it is already included in their guidelines. So you have to see in their report how much is the pulmonary hypertension. Now we see few cardiologic concepts before we go to anesthetic management, because this is also very important. You all know this Frank-Starling law. So this is the normal curve, LV end diastolic volume against cardiac output. And systolic heart failure, one must know systolic heart failure to understand diastolic heart failure. So systolic heart failure is a flattened curve. And in systolic heart failure, even if you reduce the LV volume, it is quite tolerated. There is no decrease in cardiac output for a considerable time. So diuresis is very well tolerated. This is very important concept, which in diastolic heart failure, they don't tolerate severe diuresis at all. Again, in systolic heart failure, this is again stroke volume and afterload. When you reduce the afterload, it is quite well tolerated. Okay, the stroke volume doesn't decrease for a long time. But so these are the beautiful pictures of systolic heart failure, dilated heart, okay, and diastolic heart failure. See the chink of LV cavity, hardly there is any volume. Actually, in diastolic heart failure, volume in LV is reduced. In systolic heart failure, volume is increased. So how do we differentiate these two? As per pressure volume relationship, okay, systolic heart failure versus diastolic. In systolic, there is impaired contractility. You all know ejection fraction is less. The contractility may be normal in diastolic heart failure, but there is slow LV relaxation. In systolic heart failure, there is low stroke volume. In diastolic, there is steep LV pressure volume curve, which I will show you soon. And that is because of increased LV stiffness. In systolic heart failure, LV progress, there is progressive dilatation of LV and it causes increase in afterload. Laplace, all know this. Again, in systolic heart failure, there is more afterload dependent situation. So if you reduce afterload, it is beneficial to that heart. But in diastolic heart failure, it is more preload dependent because LA is already full, LA pressure is already increased. In systolic heart failure, both pre and afterload reduction are tolerated quite well. So in short, you will come to know that systolic heart failure is, in a way, is easier to treat. But here, afterload and preload reductions are tolerated, but in a very narrow therapeutic window. So it is a real tight rope walk for us. So this is the pressure volume relationship when we compare systolic and diastolic heart failure. See, this is the flattish curve I told you. This is the normal curve, and in diastolic dysfunction, it is very steep. The moment you give more fluid, the heart fails. The moment you give more diuretic, the heart goes down. So it's a very precarious balance. Try to understand this. So whenever there is preload reduction, it is less tolerable due to preload dependency. Already it is thick LA, thick LV. So you can't give vigorous diuresis in this patient. In short, what you have to, if patient is already having high PCWP at normal LV volume to maintain cardiac output, one has to accept it. Don't reduce it to a great extent. Okay. So how do we then bring back this diastolic dysfunction fellow to normal? By giving mild afterload reduction, so that the curve from 3 will change to 1, that is normal heart. That is also known as lusitropic effect. Again, understand this heart rate and diastolic dysfunction. Very important concept. See, this is grade 1 diastolic dysfunction. There is small e, impaired early feeling, and large a. Okay. In this situation, if you slow the heart rate, there is because E wave is small, very small quantity of blood is going to LV during early diastole. So there is lot of blood still remaining in LA. So there is vigorous contraction during atrial kick and it empties. So in this patient, if he is having tachycardia and if you reduce it, it will improve his LA emptying into LV. But in this situation, this is known as grade 3 diastolic dysfunction or decompensated heart failure. There is tall E wave due to high LA pressure. This is again L wave due to high LA pressure. It's hallmark of high LAP, and small, very small A wave because hardly there is any blood in LA now. That is why the A wave is very small. So atrial kick cannot push much blood against already high diastolic LV pressure, because by the time all blood is gone into LV, so LV pressure is also increased, LA pressure is also increased, but the gradient is not much, so there is hardly any flow during atrial kick. So if this heart, decompensated heart, is having tachycardia, don't ever try to reduce the pulse rate, because that high pulse rate is essential for maintaining the cardiac output, because it is already a failing heart. So what do you do? How do you do? You give diuresis to reduce afterload of that heart and make it good for contraction. Okay, this is how you should do. Now let's see certain echocardiographic picture of this. This is the normal diastolic function, normal E and A wave. This is E wave, this is A wave. Okay, so E by A is more than 1. This is grade 1 diastolic dysfunction, where E is less than A, less than 0.8 actually, it must be less than 0.8. And this is decompensated diastolic dysfunction, that is also known as grade 3, where E by A is more than 2. Now coming to tissue Doppler, that is E prime. These are all transthoracic because diastology is studied in transthoracic more, obviously. So this is the tissue Doppler, and where E prime, tissue movement E prime is always more than A. It is a normal heart. But when E by E prime, as in this case, this is E wave of blood velocity and this is E prime of tissue velocity, it is more than 14 as shown over here, it is raised LAP. So now come to the clinical presentation. They are all non-specific. So dyspnea and exertion, so you come across so many cases, it's very common, my friends, it is very common. There is pulmonary congestion or acute pulmonary edema. You can have mild cough or he can be breathless at rest, pedal edema and fatigue. They are all non-specific complaints. So what we have to see in pre-operative round, we have to see, do Doppler patterns match the symptoms? So what are the symptoms? In normal and grade 1, or in normal there is no symptom of course, but grade 1 and grade 2, which is pseudo-normal, you get dyspnea only after exertion. And in grade 3 and pseudo-normal, sometimes in pseudo-normal you get dyspnea at rest. So this is very important. Coming to causes, friends, it is a very, very common situation. You come across diastolic dysfunction every day. So most common is hypertension with LVH. Advanced systolic dysfunction can also cause. Advanced age, females are more common in this group. coronary artery disease, diabetes, obesity, sleep apnea. If patient is snoring, ask the history of sleep apnea. Very important. Restricted amyloid, sarcoid, and all those storage diseases. HOCM, constrictive pericarditis, and all untreated chronic valvular lesion except mitral stenosis. Why? Because mitral stenosis, LV is protected, so LV compliance is maintained to a great extent. Now coming to echocardiography reports. See, friends, I'll show you a few echocardiography reports which are seen many times during our clinical practice. And before going to this, I want you to get used to this 2016 ASA guidelines. You know, these are the 5 parameters which they study: E by E prime, septal E velocity, lateral E velocity, TR velocity more than 2.8, and LA volume index. See, lot of importance is given to LA volume. Now, few months ago, some of your friends had presented LA function or LA strain, which is very important and coming up in a big way. So LA volume index is very important. So when you get less than 50% positive this, then it is a normal diastolic function. Where do you use these guidelines? When there is normal EF, okay, and heart is absolutely normal otherwise, prima facie. If 50% are positive, this is intermediate. That is the drawback of these guidelines, that it has a lot of chunk which is intermediate. And when these are more than 50% positive, obviously patient is having diastolic dysfunction. Now to go further, whenever there is already reduced EF or patient is having hypertension, diabetes, ischemic heart, then we have to follow this chart. And mind well, when you come across with this, I don't want to go into detail of this because it's a bit complicated. And whenever there is grade 1, what I want to stress upon your mind is, whenever there is grade 1 diastolic dysfunction and patient is becoming breathless after exercise, please ask them to undergo diastolic stress test where it will be unmasked, that his diastolic dysfunction will be unmasked. And this is obviously grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. This group is difficult to manage, and when this group we face, we have to take adequate care during operation, pre-operative and post-operative, not to land him into grade 3 at least. Okay. So this is one of the echo reports of 55-year-old female, and the echocardiologist, whether it is done by a cardiologist or MBBS or MD fellow, I don't know. He had written severe LV systolic dysfunction with LV EF 30% and no diastolic dysfunction. It cannot be. Always systolic heart failure is always associated with some part of diastolic dysfunction. So always look into this. The same lady, when she was echoed again, which I had done this echo, she had obviously E by E prime more than 14. She had pulmonary hypertension. So obviously she was in reduced EF with grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. She becomes a different person to be managed when you look at this grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. Another patient, 49 years old with chronic hypertension. Now, very nicely it is written grade 2 diastolic dysfunction with raised LAP. Wonderful. So you know where you are, okay? This is a third patient, again 49 years with LVH with pulmonary hypertension. But look at this report: severe tricuspid regurgitation, severe pulmonary hypertension with RVSP 70, mildly dilated right heart, but there is no mention of diastolic dysfunction. I'm sure this person is grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. This is 66 years old male with ischemic heart disease. Again, there is, here it is very properly shown that E by E prime is more than 14. Raise LAP, you know where you are and you know how to manage this patient during operation. Now this is normal echo. Unfortunately, this clip is not running, but it's all right. I will show you another clip of systolic heart failure later. But this is normal heart. It is parasternal long axis view with normal ejection fraction. This is systolic heart failure. See, this heart is dilated, and you can visually also see that there is hardly any positive contribution to the cardiac output. So it is very severely depressed systolic heart failure. Again, this still picture showing dilated heart. Okay, coming to diastolic heart failure, see, look at the ventricle now. See the severe hypertrophy. Hardly it is, you know, loaded with so many myocytes, and there is hardly any cavity inside. And see the concentric hypertrophy of this heart. And this is the transesophageal picture. Sorry, my slides are stuck. Hello friends, while I am dealing with this, I am just trying to teach you how diastolic heart failure is very important and very common too. In the meanwhile, you can start pouring questions. Rajiv? Hello? Hello? Hello friends? Yeah, I'm trying to get to the slides, you know, again. Hello? Yeah, few minutes, give me 1 second. Something has happened. I don't know. See whether you are able to see my slides up now. Are you? No? Oh, moment. I will close it again and start. Oh, okay. Okay. Should I close or should I reduce? Reduce. I think I will reduce and then start again. It's a new application for me. So many. No, where I go here. Okay. Share content. Yes, fine. Now just let me know. I'm. See, are you able to see? Yeah, slideshow.
Yes.
Okay, okay. No, I didn't know what should I do now. Didn't show. Should I go with this only then? Okay. But otherwise, I am able to hear, isn't it? Okay. Let's see. Sorry. Full, not full screen. And okay. Are you able to see now? No, no. Are you able to see the? Um, yes. Are you able to see? Huh? Are you able to see now? Just let me know. If I am visible with this also, slides are visible with this mode, I think we will continue with this because I will continue like this. Okay. Now I have come to this. Please ask one of the students if they are able to understand. I was here, I think.
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
Yeah, yeah.
We can hear.
Start from here. Okay. Thank you, Gauri. Thank you. See, are you able to see Hocum picture now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so this is the heart of Hocum. See, there in diastolic dysfunction, there are many causes. So this is one of them, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Again, there is a severe hypertrophy of the heart. Heart is loaded with myocytes and is unable to relax. Are you able to see this slide, which is this video clip? All these, we are all technology dependent now. See, this is the, you all know what is SAM, I am sure about it. And this is the severe hypertrophy of the heart. Are you able to get it? What I am showing you. Hello friends.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And see why I am showing you this, because this heart is loaded with myocytes and very thick. The tissue hardly moves. So there is tremendous reduction in E prime, that is tissue movement. That is what I just wanted to show you this time. Okay. Now the importance of pulmonary hypertension. I have already told you that the sequelae of chronically elevated left atrial pressure is ultimately back pressure and coming on the right side of the heart and causing pulmonary hypertension. So one has to see in diagnosing the diastolic heart failure or diastolic dysfunction, how much is the TR velocity. If it is more than 2.8, certainly it is in grade 3. You have to be very careful in these patients. So coming to the last part and not the least at all is the anesthetic management. We all are versatile anesthesiologists and we have to deal with, like Shri Krishna, we deal with so many things at a time. So how do we go about it? So pre-operatively, unlike systolic failure, diastolic heart failure has no specific treatment. So how do they treat? Cardiologists treat these things. They treat hypertension, they treat ischemic heart, So the underlying cause is treated. See, basically it is a microvascular disease. It has been studied in detail now, proved entity, and it is a microvascular disease. So they treat it accordingly. Then there is mild afterload reduction is also done in preoperative period to improve relaxation and cardiac output. So ACE inhibitors and ARBs, okay, they are given in these patients. Then sometimes if the LFP is too high, patient is breathless at rest, then preload reduction, mild preload reduction is also required to reduce congestion. And if patient is in atrial fibrillation, you all know that atrial kick is so important in this patient. So one has to control rate as well as rhythm in this patient. And always remember the therapeutic window of these patients is narrower than the systolic failure. So coming to operative management, let's go to general principle. Systolic heart failure always has some diastolic dysfunction, mind well. So you have to, so how do you manage? Then you will ask me, you are showing us to look at the diastolic heart failure, but there is many a time they both coexist. So what do you do? So pre-operatively, you ask cardiologist which is the dominant failure, whether it is systolic or diastolic, and accordingly you have to manage these cases. And of course, you all know adequate sedation, optimum analgesia. These are all important. And avoid vasoconstriction. How do you do that? Prevent rise in afternoon. Again, depth of anesthesia and warm IV fluid. See temperature of the theater, IV fluid temperature. Patient can become hypothermic, which certainly increases the systemic vascular resistance, which is bad for diastolic. And one has to give adequate PEEP, not high PEEP. They cannot tolerate excessive PEEP. When it is grade 1 diastolic dysfunction, you are a little relaxed because they are little easier to manage. You can certainly give certain amount of fluid to these patients because many times they are preload dependent. So to maintain normal LAP, one has to, they cannot tolerate dehydration. That is what I mean by that. So adequate preload maintenance. And here you very minutely observe his saturation. The moment otherwise normal, all other parameters are normal like ventilation and everything, there is suddenly drop in saturation. It's a very sensitive sign of raised LAP. So one has to stop giving fluid. So it is a precarious balance, I told you. You have to be very careful in fluid management. And when it is grade 3 diastolic dysfunction, there is already raised LAP. So one has to reduce preload with mild diuresis. Mild is the word which is very important. Severe diuresis is very harmful, which is significantly different from systolic heart failure. Try to understand these concepts. Let any patient come to you, you will be able to handle this if you understand these concepts. Again, intraoperative management management as far as afterload is concerned. When mild afterload reduction you do with lucitropy effect, if BP is raised, you try to reduce BP. It is diastolic dysfunction is improved. It is good for that. Less compliant heart. Isoflurane, they have found that it is better than sevoflurane. There are many people who have done research on this. Then always go for inodilator, never for vasoconstrictor inotrope. So either dobutamine or milrinone, and that too very precariously. Severe afterload reduction is harmful. So milrinone, when you are using, you have to be very, very careful. Again here, severe afterload reduction can be easily tolerated by the heart which is in systolic heart failure, but not in diastology. Now we will consider heart rate. I have already explained you. In grade 1, you can certainly give beta blocker because I have explained you all these. But in grade 3, don't give beta blocker because it is already a decompensated heart. Ejection is also started falling. And tachycardia is required to maintain that cardiac output. So you have to accept that heart rate of say up to 1 beats per minute. Don't try to reduce it less than that. And in atrial fibrillation, you have to control his rhythm as well as rate. So in conclusion, diastolic dysfunction is an important consideration during perioperative period, very important. Echo provides a snapshot of DD to guide management, and narrow therapeutic window renders this DD treatment challenging. All the best for your diastolic dysfunction management. I'm very grateful to Dr. Murlidhar for including me in this team of international faculty of transesophageal echocardiography, and I have been coming to your hospital for more than 15 years now. God bless you and thank you. You can ask questions now. Rajiv, where is the chat box now? Anyone help me to get the questions? Hello, Rajiv? Hello? Hello. How to go to chat box? I have to, how to stop share now? I don't know. Share content. Okay. Yeah. Share content. Yes. Hide. Yes. Now, how to go to chat box? Now, where is your chat box? Show conversation. Show conversation. Show conversation. Okay. No, should I ask or should they ask me? They should ask me. Okay, ask them to pop up the questions. I will be able to answer them. Okay, ask them. Okay, yes. Hello friends, if you have any questions, you can ask also. If Raju can unmute you, you can ask the questions from microphone also. Hello?
Ma'am, there is one doubt. For diastolic function, we do another parameter, the S by D ratio also. Ma'am, do you follow it?
That is pulmonary vein, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that is important, but in new guidelines they have not taken it. But of course, whenever you are in dilemma, whether he is, in indeterminate group, which is a large group of people in diastolic dysfunction, he is neither in grade 1. I mean, he is beyond grade 1, but we don't know in which grade 2 or grade 3. Grade 3 you can identify. It is the grade 2 which is very difficult, and there certainly you go for pulmonary vein. And when there is systolic excursion in pulmonary vein is less than diastolic excursion, so certainly he is having raised LAP. It simply shows raised LAP. Ultimately, what is your LT? That is why I didn't show it, because they have removed it from the guideline. But of course, you can take help of that. And whenever there is raised LAP, these are all ancillary parameters to know about raised LAP. But whenever there is mitral regurg, it can cause a reversal of S and D ratio, and there are different things where they can have a reversal of S and D ratio. But ultimately, what it tells you is increased left atrial pressure, which is so important for all of you. Come on, you guys are very talented. I know you. You should ask me more questions. I would love to, because I am studying this diastolic dysfunction for more than 35 years. Even 35 years back, I had, I had challenged one cardiologist about diastology, and I have been observing these cases during one patient. I remember one patient of bypass surgery, severely hypertrophied ventricle, hypertensive. I could not give him even 200 ml of fluid throughout the procedure of 3 hours. Only 200 ml of fluids. So that much his ventricle, his left atrium was so much, that, though it was a case 10 years back, diastology was not studied that much, but I vividly remembered this case that I could give only 200 ml of fluid. So imagine how precarious is the balance of fluid in these patients.
Ma'am, one more doubt.
Yes?
Yeah, Maitri, go ahead.
Yes.
Ma'am, is there any what happens to the diastolic function when the patient is under anesthesia, and is there any difference between a patient undergoing a general anesthesia and a spinal anesthesia procedure?
Yes. See, general anesthesia, IPPR certainly helps diastolic dysfunction. Okay, because there is some amount of reduction in afterload, provided you have kept the anesthetic depth adequate and other parameters are well maintained. You are not giving very cold fluid and all those things. As against spinal anesthesia, it is a bit uncontrolled situation. Why? Because you don't know, you don't have control over the systemic vascular resistance. Do you have? You don't know how much to. Once you give spinal anesthesia, it is all dilated, so it is all unpredictable. So preferably, I would prefer general anesthesia because you can control the systemic vascular resistance. But of course, it all depends on how severe is the diastolic dysfunction. If it is just grade 1, you can certainly go ahead, small procedure. Otherwise, no comorbidities, you can certainly go. You know, it is always case wise, and it is always tailor made. You cannot, fix the rules for generalize. You cannot generalize the rules. You have to go by case. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
The diastology is very common. You should come up with many questions. You ask many questions because of time. I have reduced this only practical point of view and tried to make you understand the physiology behind it. That is very important. You don't push the grade 1 to grade 2. See how they diagnose pseudonormal. When pseudonormal, I'm sure you are aware of all these grades. Okay, that you can always read in the books. But when this is pseudonormal, that is normal E by A ratio, apparently they try to give Valsalva to these patients. What do cardiologists do? They give Valsalva. So by giving Valsalva, they reduce left atrial pressure because the venous return is reduced, and then the pattern becomes like grade 1. That means he is in grade 2, which is looking like pseudo-normal, which is looking like normal. Okay, so these patients are at risk of going to grade 3 during surgery because it is a stress. Surgery and anesthesia is a stressful situation. So there is going to be tachycardia, there is going to be an increase in blood pressure, volume overload and dehydration. So many things happen in during surgery. So naturally, grade 2 diastolic dysfunction one must identify before surgery. Whenever you ask cardiologist, you insist, you read this echo report very properly. When they have written grade 2, you have to understand that you are likely to push him into grade 3. So grade 2 is, and it is very common, very common.
Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, I have one doubt. You said that diastolic dysfunction we can go better with transthoracic and not transesophageal. So, ma'am, why that difference is there?
What I meant is diastology is studied more in transthoracic because transesophageal, there are so many things. One has to know the diastology before giving anesthesia, isn't it? So there you can't do transesophageal echo and diagnose. There you have to go for transthoracic and then only you know the patient's diastology when he is awake. That is important.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Under anesthesia, transesophageal diastology is yet to come. Dr. Subramaniam has studied it in detail. There are so many anesthesiologists are also doing research on it, but still it is studied more in transthoracic all over the world. And the guidelines come after transthoracic echo only. That is why before surgery you must know what is the grade, where he is, and clinically you can know. Ask him whether he is getting breathless after exercise, which he never used to get. And it is very common. It is very common. You will find so many people around with diastolic dysfunction, grade 1, 2, different shapes.
Ma'am, if like you mentioned that afterload reduction is and preload reduction is good in diastolic dysfunction. But if the diastolic dysfunction is due to HOCM, then it would change.
See, that is why I tried to explain you all these curves. See, the pressure volume curve of diastolic dysfunction is steep. It's almost straight line. You give more fluid, heart becomes bad. You reduce its fluid, heart becomes bad. So afterload reduction and preload reduction are to be reduced in a very mild, minute form. Very bit by bit, you have to reduce it. You can't just, like how systolic heart failure, you give 20 milligram of Lasix or 40 milligram of Lasix. That type of thing you cannot do over here. That is what I mean. It is tolerated, but in a very, therapeutic. That is what I mean by narrow therapeutic window. You understood? Thick heart, hypertrophied heart, you have to be very, very precarious, very precarious. In this thick heart of HOCM, you can't give, many times you may not be able to give, as I told you, few hundred ml of fluid also. And still the BP will be maintained, even though the loss is there. That means he needed some volume reduction. Okay.
Okay.
You understood, no, what I am trying to tell you?
Yes.
I hope this will certainly, this should change the, concept behind managing the diastolic heart failure. Come with questions. I would love to answer them. It's a very favorite topic of mine. And you know what is the treatment of diastolic dysfunction today? Weight reduction and exercise. That is the treatment of diastolic. They, worldwide, what they have in Mayo Clinic, they have studied in many US hospitals. The research is going on, and the treatment is, because it is a microvascular disease also, many times there is no hypertrophy of the heart. So hypertrophy of the heart is not a compulsory thing in diastology. Even then the heart is unable to relax because of fibrosis. So the microvascular theory has come. Until now we were seeing, yes, diastolic dysfunction, hypertrophied heart. No, it's not like that. Hypertrophy may be there, may not be there. Yes? How many of you have, how many of you have seen this diastolic dysfunction worsening, getting worse during operation? Many times pink frothy fluid coming out of tube in emergency surgeries of prostate, old man, with pink frothy fluid coming out of it, chronically hypertensive. It could be diastolic heart failure, it may not be systolic, or it may be both, with predominantly diastolic heart failure. So one has to, look at both, at a bigger picture. You look at the bigger picture and try to manage these cases. Yes, any questions? I think we still have 5 minutes, isn't it, Raju? Do we have few more minutes? Or should we call it a day? Rajiv? Hello, should we call it a day? It's okay then. Should we log out? Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay. Okay. Short notice, 2 days back, Dr. Molina told me. Okay. 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 Thank you. So thanks a lot. Thank
Thank you, ma'am, so much.
you very much.
Thank
I enjoyed, but this virtual thing, I can't see you. That's a very bad thing. But I enjoyed it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am.